gravis. So these are the general objectives. First, we need to understand myasthenia gravis and its implications on anesthesia practice. To discuss the comprehensive perioperative anesthetic management of patients with myasthenia gravis, to recognize the potential perioperative complications in myasthenia gravis in patients undergoing surgery, and to formulate safe and effective anesthetic plans tailored for the patients with myasthenia gravis. So this is a case of patient HK, a 31-year-old female diagnosed with myasthenia gravis in crisis, hospital-acquired pneumonia, and DM type 2. The surgical plan is for tracheostomy tube insertion, and the anesthetic plan is for GAT. So the patient is a known case of myasthenia gravis since 2021. With 7 days prior to admission, patient was noted with difficulty of breathing, difficulty of speaking and enunciating words, bilateral drooping of eyelids, and weakness on all extremities. Patient was brought to our institution and was admitted, and upon admission, patient was intubated. On hospital day 61, patient was referred to our service for the contemplated procedure, which is the tracheostomy tube insertion due to prolonged intubation. The review of systems is unremarkable. Patient has a history of meropenem allergy, which presents with urticaria and is relieved by CTBC. For the past medical history, patient is a known case of myasthenia gravis since 2021, currently on pyridoxine 60 mg tablet 4 times a day and prednisolone 10 mg tablet twice a day. Patient is also diagnosed with diabetes mellitus and there are no previous anesthetic experience. For the laboratories, hemoglobin is slightly decreased at 90, hematocrit at 0.30, WBC is elevated at 15.1, and platelet is at 523. Electrolytes, AST, ALT, and bleeding parameters are all within the normal range. For the chest X-ray, there is slight clearing in the pneumonic opacities in both lower lungs, which is ascribed as pneumonia. ECG is sinus ridden, and patient is classified as COVID RT-PCR negative. Patient is awake, tolerates intubation with a biophysical score of 3, communicates via writing, and is not in distress with the following vital signs. So BP of 120/80, heart rate of 79, RR of 21, and currently 99% is 99% hooked to the mechanical ventilator. For the physical examination, pertinent finding of minimal crackles on the left upper lung field. And then patient is classified as ASA 4 and is intubated. For the GCS scoring, upon physical examination, patient is GCS 11, E4, VT, and M6. With essentially normal cranial nerves and with motor scoring of 4/5 on all extremities. Sensory is 100% on all extremities. In the background, patient was seen preoperatively and anesthetic plan was explained. Informed consent was secured, and during transfer to the operating room, patient was placed in supine position and was hooked to the mechanical ventilator. Preoperative vital signs are as follows: BP of 180/80, heart rate of 90, RR of 18 cycles per minute, and oxygen saturation of 100%, hooked to mechanical ventilator. Induction was started using propofol as total intravenous anesthesia and was placed in targeted controlled infusion Schneider model. It was set at 4 microgram per ml, and fentanyl 50 micrograms was given prior to copy. As the operation started, propofol was titrated down to 3 micrograms per ml, and it was maintained throughout the procedure. Intraoperative vital signs were as follows: BP of 100 to 120 over 60 to 70. No episodes of tachycardia, and heart rate was at 80 to 90 beats per minute. And auto saturation remained at 100%. So during the procedure lasted for an hour and 2 minutes with no intraoperative complications. Total amount of crystalloids infused was 200 ml, and there was approximately 20 ml blood loss. The patient was transferred to CNS ward after the operation and was with a stable vital sign. Post-op medication was paracetamol 1 gram every 8 hours for the 24 hours. It was given as post-op medication. Myasthenia gravis. So, myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune neuromuscular disorder which is characterized by weakness and fatigability of the skeletal muscles. So, it is caused by autoantibodies targeting the acetylcholine receptors at the neuromuscular junction. So, there is decrease in the functional acetylcholine receptors at the neuromuscular junction. It is also noted that 90% of patients with myasthenia gravis have also been diagnosed with thymoma and thymic hyperplasia. Although for this disease, the role of thymus is still unclear. So impaired transmission may lead to muscle weakness, especially in the bulbar, ocular, and respiratory muscles. So several muscles are affected, including the extremities, respiratory, ocular, and those that are innervated by the cranial nerves 9 to 12. So the hallmark of myasthenia gravis is weakness of the skeletal muscles, which is worsened by physical activity and improves by rest. So several muscles can be weakness can be exacerbated by stress, infection, hypokalemia, and medications such as antibiotics, including aminoglycosides, and other meds such as propranolol and the surgery itself. So, diagnosis of myasthenia gravis. Myasthenia gravis can be diagnosed by repetitive nerve stimulation, which is the most specific. So, the result will be there is decrement of 10% in the observation of compound muscle action potential with the amplitude 4th to 5th waveform. So there is decrement. And then we can also diagnose this by EMG and pharmacologically by the tensional test. So for the myasthenia gravis foundation of clinical classification, so our patient is currently intubated. So for the summary, myasthenia gravis class 1 only has ocular muscle weakness. So this may include ptosis, weakness of the eyelids, and there are no other muscles affected. So for classification 2, it has a subtype, so 2A and 2B. So 2A includes limb and eggshell weakness, and then 2B, there is mild oropharyngeal and respiratory muscle weakness. For 3, there is moderate generalized weakness and also has subtypes A and B. So 3A for moderate generalized weakness of the limbs and eggshell muscles, and 3B for moderate generalized weakness of the oropharyngeal and respiratory muscles. For the 4, class 4 includes severe generalized weakness and also has subtypes A and B. So severe limb weakness of the muscles for A, and for B, severe oropharyngeal respiratory muscle weakness. For our patient is classified as class 4 because the patient is currently in crisis and requiring intubation and mechanical ventilation.
This scoring system or the classification is for general sa medicine part.
Ma'am, based on garage po yun.
I think because sabihin, what I mean is there any other, are there any other scoring system that you need to know which is important for your management later on in our post-op?
Yung nabasa ko ma'am, yan lang po, yung Osterman po yung tawag ko. Osterman classification for myasthenia gravis.
Pero the need for, kasi currently your patient is intubated.
Yes po.
But not all patients with myasthenia gravis are intubated.
Yes po.
So if patients who are not intubated, how would you know that there is a risk for them to be mechanically ventilated post-operative?
Meron po akong table mamaya mamaya.
Kahit tanong po yun.
Sabi po doon, if the vital capacity is 2 to 2.9 liters po.
What is that scoring system? Is there a term for that?
Ang nakalagay lang po is scoring system for post-operative ventilation in patients with myasthenia gravis. Ito po yun, ma'am. Risk factors of post-operative ventilation in patients with myasthenia gravis. So, vital capacity of less than 2 to 2.9 liters, the duration of myasthenia gravis more than 6 years, pyridostic mean dosage of more than 750 per day, history of COPD, preoperative bulbar symptoms, history of myasthenic crisis, intraoperative blood loss more than 1,000, and serum acetylcholine receptor antibody more than 100 nanomole per ml, and pronounced decrement in the response on low frequency repetitive nerve stimulation. So if 2 or 3 major risk factors are present, especially those that are related,
Lahat ba ito major risk factors?
hindi po ma'am. So yung major risk factors po is
Kailangan
yung
mo siyang i-divide kasi not all of these are major, may minor dyan.
Yes.
All of the things. So alin dyan yung major?
So yung major po dyan is yung vital capacity less than 2 to 2.9 liters. And then another major symptom is the bulbar symptom and history of myasthenic crisis. Yun po yung major risk factors natin. Some single factors are considered highly significant, yung pong mention ko, and it is often considered for delayed extubation in post-operative mechanically ventilated patients.
Ma-highlight mo
And
ngayon para makita ng mga spectator.
Kasi most of the patients who would come to you with myasthenia gravis are not intubated. Most of them are already taking pyridostigmine. Diba?
Ako ma'am.
So, their dosages would also be one factor.
Yes po ma'am.
Kahit yung major ng
Yes po, yung more than 750 per day. So yung major factors is yung vital capacity less than 2 to 2.9, and then preoperative bulbar symptoms and history of myasthenic crisis.
I-mention mo na ba yung myasthenic crisis?
Hindi po.
I-mention mo
Hindi
na.
mention po. Meron ba ng dulo ko ma'am?
Nasa preoperative.
Sige, balik ko sa akin. So, for the preoperative assessment, this should include detailed history, including the disease severity, as what I have discussed earlier, and the type, to predict the anesthetic risk and the plan for airway and ventilation needs. So, we also need to evaluate for the respiratory symptoms and check for the vital capacity, as what has been mentioned earlier. Less than 2 to 2.9 is a major risk factor for patients post-operatively if they need to be intubated. And then medication review should also be assessed in order for the post-operative in order for us to assess the response to our anesthetic drugs, including or most especially for the neuromuscular blockers. So example is the use of pyridostigmine and immunosuppressant. So when a patient is currently using pyridostigmine, non-depolarizing muscular blockers have exaggerated effects, and succinylcholine has a prolonged duration. So for those who are not using pyridostigmine, this will non-depolarizing neuromuscular blockers may require a slightly higher doses in these patients, and succinylcholine will have a shorter duration. For the immunosuppressive treatment, patients affected by it can be affected by the immune status and the stress response of the patient. So recent plasmapheresis or IVIG will suggest unstable disease. So pulmonary function test should also be assessed in order to assess for post-operative ventilation, including thymoma, prior thymectomy, and this will impact the airway disease And then the last one is optimize the patient's medical management prior to surgery. So we need to review medications, as I have mentioned earlier, the medications that can worsen myasthenia gravis, and then continue all myasthenia gravis medications perioperatively. Next one. So, tapos na yun. So for the intraoperative management of myasthenia gravis, the use of agents such as propofol, remifentanil, and this will be used for intubation and maintenance. So volatile anesthetics usually provides adequate neuromuscular paralysis in order to allow for most procedures to be performed without the use of neuromuscular blocking agents. So induction of anesthesia is readily achieved by using these agents. So other agents that can be used are propofol and omidate. And we can also use lidocaine, which can help blunt airway reflexes during intubation. So if possible, we need to avoid muscle relaxants. So as mentioned earlier, the polarizing agents, due to the decrease in acetylcholine receptors, will show resistance. And then non-depolarizing agents in patients with MG or myasthenia gravis are highly sensitive to these agents. So standard doses can cause profound and prolonged weakness.
Can you use,
So-
for the non-polarizing agents, can you use other non-depots like anaporipone?
Becorone yung po pwede dun sa
Because
nabasa ko.
why is your choice Becorone and anaporipone?
Because it can be easily reversed po by by Sugammadex, which will not cause myasthenic crisis po in patients. Unlike pag yung neostigmine po
Can
yung
you use neostigmine reversing?
ang sabi po doon, we can use neostigmine, but we need to be wary of the symptoms of myasthenic crisis.
Ayun, ako sasabihin ko ano yung myasthenic crisis. Hindi, kasi kailangan mo sasabihin kasi ano sa PO pa lang, how would you know that the patient had myasthenic crisis if you don't know the symptoms? So, kanina nga tayo kung pinabalik sa
Apo.
what's myasthenic crisis?
So,
What
may-
would you listen to the patient?
Myasthenic crisis po is a life-threatening complication of myasthenia gravis. It is characterized by severe weakness, which can lead to respiratory failure and will require intubation and mechanical ventilation. So for myasthenic crisis, we need to watch out for tachypnea, shallow breaths, dysphagia, weak cough, and poor secretions, which are the bulbar symptoms, and voice changes or airway obstruction.
Tapos, wait lang, balik pa.
Yes po, ma'am.
Sa monitors, ano sinabi mong monitors ganyan?
Hindi pa po, ito pa po, sa quantitative neuromuscular monitoring.
So, ano yung
Wala.
sabihin sa quantitative neuromuscular monitoring?
So, quantitative neuromuscular monitoring includes the talk ratio and gait measurement.
Why? Why do you need to measure that?
It is crucial po in order to avoid underdosing or overdosing in patients, and it can also enhance safer and especially in extubation decisions. No?
For example, I did a general anesthesia in a patient, but I did not use any muscle relaxants. Should I opt not to use my top watch? Or my neuromuscular monitor? Can I do away with it?
I want people to read po if there is no use of neuromuscular blocking agents, so we perform pa din po yung talk watch or pace measurements, but I'll get back to you
What
na
other
lang.
agents, hindi pwede do this up. What other agents have a neuromuscular relaxant other than your NMDs? Are there any agents that has an effect on
Yes po. Yung depolarizing neuromuscular block.
neuromuscular blocker pa rin? Other agents other than your neuromuscular blocker?
Which can worsen po.
Which
The,
has an effect on your muscle.
yes po, ma'am.
Which has a relaxant effect.
Yung mga mention ko po kanina na can worsen myasthenia gravis, yung mga aminoglycosides,
Anesthetic agents and
Sab-
combinational agents ko ba mayroong muscle relaxant?
yes po ma'am. Sabi po doon, volatile anesthetics and propofol with remifentanil can be safely used and produce muscle relaxation po.
Yes. Kaya kailangan, kahit hindi ka pa rin gumagamit, when you're not using any muscle relaxants, it is, or they advise to use your muscular monitors.
And then, use reduced non-depolarizing NMDAs, including rocuronium and vecuronium. And as what I have mentioned earlier, neuromuscular monitoring, which include the vibration field measurement. And ABG is necessary if there is respiratory compromise suspected. And then we need to extubate only when the patient is fully awake, which is confirmed by neuromuscular recovery. So we can use Sugamadex and is preferred over neostigmine for reversal. So Sugamadex provides a rapid and complete reversal of the aminosteroids without causing cholinergic symptoms. Then Sugamadex is also vastly safer and effective than neostigmine because it avoids exacerbating cholinergic crisis and provides a complete reversal for regardless of the underlying receptor status. Then regional anesthesia can also be used cautiously, and it is avoided you need to avoid high neuraxial blocks in patients with bulbar or respiratory involvement. So need to provide the epidural and spinal anesthesia can be used in myasthenia gravis patients in addition to general anesthesia, provided that muscle function and ventilation are carefully monitored perioperatively.
Are these patients sensitive or resistant to the effects of your volatiles?
They are sensitive po, ma'am. So they are weaker and are more prone to experiencing muscle weakness po after using volatile anesthetics and Viva po.
So mas konti na
Yes. Doon po pala sa neuromuscular blockers, if we can, I forgot to mention that succinylcholine is not absolutely contraindicated and is generally avoided in myasthenia gravis due to the unpredictable response. So if the patient is experiencing myasthenia gravis, we can use 1 to 1.5 milligram per kilogram po since there is resistance po to succinylcholine.
How about your Latipo?
For non-depolarizing agent po, since sobrang sensitive daw po sa non-depolarizing agents yung mga patients with myasthenia gravis, it is advised that 0.1 to 0.2% daw po ng ED95 yung pwedeng gamitin natin or 10% of the usual dose po yung pwede. 0.1 or 0.2% of the ED95.
Ano mo sinasabi?
Ay, sorry po, na-skip ko lang ma'am.
Napaka-importante nun kasi bibigay ka relaxant, ito-full dose mo sila tapos sensitive sila sa non-dose mo, diba? 1/10 of the usual dose,
Yes po.
0.1%.
Kasi po sensitive, they are highly sensitive to muscle relaxation. So, as what I read po, yung usual dose natin is 2.6 times more potent than our usual dose. So, mas matagal pong nare-relax yung mga patient kahit sobrang konti lang yung ibigay natin dose sa kanila.
Ano yung problem with You need to lessen the dose of your muscle relaxant. Miss ka naman.
There is a problem in the receptor of acetylcholine.
No problem.
O, yung nagbabayad po dun sa acetylcholine receptors is yung autoantibodies po natin. No? Yes po, ma'am. So, instead na acetylcholine po yung magbayad dun sa acetylcholine receptors, yung autoantibodies po yung nagbabayad dun sa receptor, which prevents sodium influx. Therefore, wala pong muscle contraction.
Last one. Last slide na.
Yes po, ma'am. For post-operative care, you need to extubate the patient only when we need to watch out for myasthenic crisis, which was mentioned earlier. So these are the symptoms. Tachypnea, shallow breaths, dysphagia, weak cough, poor handling of secretions and voice changes or airway obstruction. So we need to also prepare for possible reintubation or delayed extubation and plan for ICU admission if there is respiratory compromise and continue anticholinesterase therapy. So in summary, comprehensive preoperative assessment and planning are essential in it avoids neuromuscular and we need to avoid neuromuscular blockers when possible and closely monitor for the post-operative period for respiratory complications. So these are my reference and resources. Thank you. Bro.
Hello po. Good afternoon po. I am Vincent Mazenco, first year resident, here to appraise the journal on myasthenia gravis po. So the objectives is to critically appraise the journal about the anesthetic plan for patients diagnosed with myasthenia gravis and to evaluate the validity of the journal and its applicability in the clinical setting. So, for the clinical scenario, we have patient HK, 31-year-old female diagnosed with myasthenia gravis in crisis, hospital-acquired pneumonia, diabetes mellitus type 2. For tracheostomy tube insertion, the plan is G8 EVA. So, using PubMed, I have used the keywords myasthenia gravis and anesthesia, and I have one journal that is available, which is magnesium sulfate reduces the rocuronium dose needed for satisfactory double lumen tube placement conditions in patients with myasthenia gravis. So this is the journal. So for the clinical question, can magnesium sulfate decrease the dose of rocuronium for induction in patients with myasthenia gravis? So, to appraise the validity, we need to answer the following questions. The first question, does the study provide a direct answer to my clinical question in terms of patients' exposure or intervention use and disease or outcome of interest? And the answer is yes. So for the population, clinical scenario, HK 31-year-old female diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, and the journal the population of the journal includes patient diagnosed with myasthenia gravis with Osserman classification of 1 to 2. So for the exposure intervention, in the case, the plan was EVA using propofol, and in journal, the anesthetic plan is Jetta, pre-treated with magnesium sulfate. tutuloy po yung outcome. But the outcome for the clinical scenario, decreased post-operative anesthetic complications. And for the journal po, decreased risk of post-operative respiratory failure from neuromuscular blockers. So the next questions, for the patients randomly assigned to treatment group, yes. Was the allocation concealed? Yes po. The selected patients were randomly assigned to receive magnesium sulfate or normal saline as control, and random sequence was kept inside sealed envelopes by research assistant not involved in the study. And okay, the attending anesthetists also were blinded to the patient's allocation po. So next, for the baseline characteristics similar at the start of the trial, the answer is yes po. As shown in the table, there is no statistical difference between the two groups. The patient's demographic data include gender, age, BMI, Osserman classification, and the length of history of myasthenia gravis po. Were patients, physicians, and those doing the assessment blind to treatment? The answer is yes. So the patients were randomly assigned to two groups and blinded to which treatment they were receiving. And the anesthesiologists also who administered the treatment were also unaware of the patient randomization. Aside from the experimental intervention, were the group treated equally? Yes po. All patients were hooked to standard monitors in the OR and also hooked to the spectral index at the operating theater po. And no pre-medications were given po. So to appraise the results, how large was the treatment effect and how precise was the estimate of the treatment effect? So the results of the study showed that the rocuronium dosage required to achieve TOF of less than 10% is 0.1 milligrams per kilogram. And in the control group naman po, it appears to be 0.28 milligram per kilogram of rocuronium. And in the magnesium sulfate group or the treatment group, 100% po were able to have excellent intubation condition compared with the control group, which amounts to around 72.7%. Can the results apply to my patient care? Yes. Were all clinically important outcomes considered? Yes. And are the likely treatment benefits worth the potential harm and cost? Yes po. The use of neuromuscular blockers po during intubation is associated with decreased risk of difficult intubation and intubation-related complications po. However, the dosage of neuromuscular blockers is of concern due to the hypersensitivity to such drugs by patients diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. So the use of magnesium sulfate is a cost-effective way to have successful first attempt intubation and decrease post-operative anesthetic complications in myasthenia gravis patients. So, myasthenia gravis is a chronic neuromuscular disease characterized by skeletal muscle weakness. This is due to the extreme sensitivity to neuromuscular blockers. A very small dose of these drugs and residual neuromuscular blockade effect may result in respiratory distress or loss of airway protection during emergence from anesthesia. As a result, some anesthesiologists prefer to avoid neuromuscular blockers. whereas intubation with neuromuscular blockers was reported to increase the risk of difficult tracheal intubation and intubation-related complications. Magnesium possesses an inhibitory effect on the neuromuscular transmission and cause a decrease in muscle fiber membrane excitability. It decreases pre-junctional release of acetylcholine from the motor nerve terminal by decreasing the calcium conductance of presynaptic voltage-dependent calcium channels, and it also reduces the sensitivity of the end plate to the acetylcholine. So magnesium shows significant neuromuscular blockade at high plasma concentrations and also at lower plasma concentrations in the presence of neuromuscular blocking agents. So, several studies had shown that magnesium sulfate could decrease the amount of rocuronium required to maintain the adequate neuromuscular blockade during different types of surgery. So, in this study, the magnesium sulfate pre-treatment has led to a reduction of cough ratio from 96 to 77% po. And it has resulted in significant decrease of rocuronium dose. So in this study, 0.1 milligrams per kilogram po yung optimal dose. This is to achieve the target cough ratio. So for the conclusion, magnesium sulfate reduces the amount of rocuronium needed to have excellent intubation and intubation conditions. The study demonstrates another mode of induction aside from TIVA, which is also effective and with decreased risk of post-anesthetic complications such as prolonged neuromuscular blockade, difficult intubation, respiratory distress, and loss of airway protection during emergence from anesthesia. Thank you.
Afternoon, doctors. I'm here to discuss about cardiovascular pathologies and their implications on anesthesia, specifically on hypertension and ischemic heart disease. So for my objectives, to understand the definition, classification, and pathophysiology of hypertension and ischemic heart disease, to analyze the anesthetic implications of hypertension and ischemic heart disease, and to identify the management of hypertension, ischemic heart disease, pre-intra and post-operative. So anesthesia is known to cause significant cardiac depression and hemodynamic instability, and some anesthetic agents have intrinsic myocardial depressant properties. In the patient with pre-existing cardiac disease, these cardiovascular anesthetic effects become much more serious. So hypertension is known to be a major risk factor for cardiovascular disease. Most of the time, there is no obvious symptoms, but this can cause undue stress on the patient's heart, vasculature, and other organs. So hypertension can be classified as your primary or essential hypertension, which accounts for 90 to 95% of cases. There is no cause yet identified. So the second is your secondary hypertension, which accounts to 5 to 10% of cases. These conditions stem from problems affecting the kidneys, arteries, heart, and the endocrine system. So the American Heart Association has classified hypertension to be more than a systolic blood pressure of more than 120 millimeters mercury. In the pre-operative period, this can occur in at least 25% of patients undergoing major surgery. Patients with underlying high blood pressure are at increased risk of perioperative hypertension episodes and are more likely to have labile hemodynamics during a procedure. In general, all long-term, some international practice guidelines support proceeding with surgery if the systolic blood pressure is less than 180 and the diastolic pressure is less than 110. Usually, antihypertensive medication treatment should be continued in these patients during the perioperative period. For patients with severe hypertension, these patients include those with diastolic pressure of more than 110 millimeters mercury or systolic blood pressure of more than 180 millimeters mercury. The anesthesiologist should weigh the potential benefits of delaying the surgery to optimize the hypertensive treatment against the risk of delaying the procedure. In general, all long-term antihypertensive treatment should be continued up to the day of the surgery, with the possible exemption of your ACE inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers. Administration of these medications within 24 hours before the surgery is consistently associated with increased risk of intraoperative hypertension and possibly associated with elevated risk of post-operative myocardial injury. So the treatment includes non-pharmacologic and pharmacologic treatments. So for the pharmacologic treatments, this includes your diuretics. This works as by decreasing the rate of urine volume output and also decrease renal tubular sodium reabsorption, thereby promoting water excretion and your sodium excretion. It also decreases your extracellular volume by decreasing the sodium content in your body. So potassium levels are also affected by these diuretics, specifically your weak diuretics and thiazide diuretics, which are not potassium-sparing diuretics, which may cause hypokalemia. And there is spironolactone, which is a potassium-sparing diuretic. This may cause hyperkalemia. Diuretics can cause dehydration, so careful assessment of the volume status of your patient is crucial prior to administering these medications. Diuretics may be continued in the perioperative period, but can be discontinued if there is reason to suspect of your volume depletion or hypokalemia. Your angiotensin-converting enzyme inhibitors block the conversion of your angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2 in the renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. Blocking the angiotensin 2 formation is a key antihypertensive strategy because your angiotensin 2 promotes your vasoconstriction and salt and water retention by stimulating your aldosterone. Your ACE inhibitors also promote accumulation of bradykinin in or at the vessel wall. Your bradykinins are vasodilators which increase the capillary permeability, leading to angioedema, which may cause glottic or which may involve your glottic or laryngeal regions. ACE cough or ACE inhibitor cough is the most common side or adverse effect of this medication. For the anesthetic implications, there is increased risk of refractory hypotension in administering this drug, and angioedema can be observed with this drug. So ARB, for your ACE, you should administer prior po to the day of your operation.
Prior to the day of the open. Ano?
Prior to your OR date. Hold on the day of the OR.
Ano talaga?
Hold on the day of the OR.
Actually, your documentation depends. Before, diba sir, na hold the day of the war. Pero kaya hindi. Anong source of it? Parang gusto niya after date ko. Hindi, kasi we're talking about anesthesia. So, anesthesia and hypertension and anti-hypertensive drugs. So, ano recommendation? May importance sa atin. Continue it, discontinue it, or the new journal says otherwise. Basta po ano. Ano po, up to date po?
Ano sir?
Baka i-diagnose ko
Herbs yan. Lipase inhibitor. Parang ay, iba yan. Iba yung hold yan. Ano ba? Ano ba sabi? So before war. Kasi sinili ba? Ano ba sabi?
ang sabi na American College of Cardiology and American Heart Association. This is for patients with ischemic heart disease. Ang topic mo rin naman na, diba? There is no difference in the amount of vasopressor and nutrient requirements if you continue or discontinue your ACE inhibitors. ACE inhibitors actually, kunyari, bypass na for example. ACE inhibitors may help control post-cardiopulmonary bypass hypertension. Your diabetic patients, on the other hand, may specifically benefit from receiving ACE inhibitors pre-operatively. However, in patients who have left ventricular dysfunction, they may suffer from intraop hypertension. Kaya sabi ko kanina, it depends. Hindi siya, teka mo na, ay, inhibitor is continue. Pero before, we discontinue already of surgery. Kasi because of the risk of hypertension. Kaya minsan yung patients nyo, ang taas na hindi ko po sa mga, di ba? 180, 190. Lalo na paghapon yung OR nila, sa blood pressure. Sa morning, doon mababa. Kasi syempre, di ba, ang peak niya, usually 6 hours per hour. Depende. So, ano gamot ko.
Your ERB blocks angiotensin 2 from angiotensin to receptor on the vascular smooth muscles. This decreases the peripheral vasoconstriction, that may lead to decreased systemic vascular resistance and ideal blood pressure. So your ARBs have no effect on bradykinin metabolism, thereby does not reduce the incidence of cough and angioedema. It is held on the day of the surgery to avoid refractory hypotension. Your CCD inhibits the opening of your L-type voltage gated channels, calcium channels, which may decrease your cardiac contractility, heart rate, and contraction velocity. This decreases both the systemic vascular resistance and your myocardial oxygen demand. So your inhalational agents decrease the availability of your calcium. This enhances the negative inotropic, chronotropic, and the chronotropic effects of your CCD. Your beta blockers, first your beta-1 receptors predominate the heart, causing increased cardiac contractility, heart rate, and atrial ventricular conduction. The beta-2 receptors predominantly regulate relaxation of the smooth muscles and the vascular test of your skeletal muscles and the bronchi. So this must be continued prior to the anesthesia or the surgery. Abrupt discontinuation of your beta blockers may lead to rebound hypertension and tachycardia, which may cause myocardial ischemia or infarction. This may be due to the increased sympathetic activity, adrenergic receptor upregulation, hypersensitivity to circulating catecholamines. So beta blockers can increase also your risk for bronchoconstriction. Your alpha-2 agonist produces your selective actuating and mild-analgesic properties. They act on your alpha-2 receptors with various subtypes that include your alpha-2A, alpha-2B, and alpha-2C subtypes. Your alpha-2A and alpha-2C play major role in sedation, analgesia, and your sympatholytic effects. And your alpha-2B receptors show to mediate your vasoconstrictive effects. So your alpha-2 agonist may precipitate a rebound hypertensive crisis. This may also lead to depression of your respiratory tract and reduce the anesthetic requirements of intravenous or agents during general anesthesia. So during induction of anesthesia, your direct laryngoscopy and total intubation may produce significant increase in your blood pressure in patients with essential hypertension. Maneuvers that suppress the critical reflex and blood autonomic response to critical manipulation may include deepen your inhalation or anesthesia. You can inject an opioid, your lidocaine, a beta blocker, or vasodilator prior to laryngoscopy, or you may limit your direct laryngoscopy to 15 seconds or less to prevent your elevation of your blood pressure during induction. During maintenance,
Anong doses? Lalagay na naman ng gano'n karami. Paano mo malalaman?
yung opioid mo, pwede mo bigyan ng 10 to 1 to 2 micrograms per kilogram. Like that yung 1 milligram per kilogram.
Kaya, pwede na tulad.
Sometimes I don't know.
May bed dose na naman. Blood tracheal reflexes.
intraoperatively response to painful stimuli is slightly, and volatile anesthetics are useful in attenuating their sympathetic nervous system activity. Antihypertensive medications can be administered by bolus or by continuous infusion.
Ano anti-hypertensive?
Any cardiac
Kasi napaka-general, di ba? Na you're managing it. So, what the first is hypertensive. What medications are you taking? What is available? What are your options? Rules na lang tayo, 0.5 milligram.
2.5 milligrams per hour.
2.5 per hour. 2.5 per hour
2.5 to 15
to 15 milligrams.
per hour.
So, ano yun, the patient who is anesthetized,
Baka siya nilito.
2.5 to 15. Kasi 1 to 2 milligrams ang bonus and then you start to increase.
A significant elevation in your blood pressure will lead to serious neurologic, cardiovascular, and surgical site complications requiring urgent management. These complications will include the surgical site bleeding, disruption of vascular anastomosis, cardiac complications, pulmonary edema, and your intracranial hemorrhage. Causes of post-operative hypertension include pain, which is the most common, risk-acid disruption, or activation of your renin-angiotensin aldosterone system, emergent excitement, shivering, full bladder, hypothermia, and your hypervolemia, secondary to excessive fluid administration intraoperatively. Here's just a table summarizing your management. So, ischemic heart disease is also referred to as your coronary heart disease. It is inadequate supply of blood to the myocardium. This may be classified as your chronic or stable angina or your acute or unstable angina. So, to differentiate the two, stable angina is episodic, occurs in a crescendo pattern, occurs on exertion, relieved by rest, and lasts up to 55 minutes only. While your stable angina is severe and acute in onset, has a crescendo pattern, occurs even at rest, and lasts for more than 10 minutes. Risk factors include your increasing age, family history of heart disease, tobacco use, diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol or triglyceride levels. So the goals is to prevent, detect, and treat your myocardial ischemia. So it is important to maintain low to normal heart rate. Tachycardia compromises your oxygen supply and demand. Myocardial oxygen demand more than doubles when your heart rate doubles. It is also important to maintain your a normal to high normal to high normal blood pressure, within 20% of your baseline. Severe hypotension will reduce myocardial supply, and severe hypertension increases the demand. It's also important to maintain adequate arterial O2 content by maintaining normal to high hemoglobin O2 saturation, and to maintain adequate hemoglobin levels. It's also important to maintain normothermia. This favors tissue release of oxygen, and hypothermia because shivering, which increases myocardial O2 demand and may result in myocardial ischemia. For monitoring, all patients should have continuous ECG monitoring to detect myocardial ischemia or arrhythmias intra or post-op. Arterial catheters or your A-line, is also important with severe coronary artery disease, cardiomyopathies, hemodynamic instability, as well as your patients with chronic coronary syndrome or undergoing major procedures that is likely to cause rapid blood loss or large fluid shifts. Your central venous catheter is also important if you are anticipating significant blood loss or again large fluid shifts. This may provide supplemental data regarding your intravascular volume status. So for the treatment, you have to treat the symptoms such as your tachycardia, which may be caused by pain or inadequate anesthesia. This is treated by administering again your opiates or giving the inhaled general anesthetic. An additional local anesthetic via your EC may be provided to detect your anesthesia. And then intravenous beta blocker may be administered. So you have to keep also your hypertension. Again, this may be caused by pain or inadequate anesthesia. You may also give your opiates within anesthesia by increasing your inhaled anesthetics, and by providing additional local anesthetic through epidural catheter. Administering a beta blocker or a vasoconstricting agent will also be necessary. So treatment of hypotension is also important. This may be managed by reducing excessive anesthetic depth or giving intravenous fluid. This may be granted by administering alpha receptor agonists or direct or indirect sympathomimetics with beta and alpha agonist effects such as your epinephrine or ephedrine. If hypotension persists, continuous infusion of phenylephrine is administered. So it is important also to again treat your low O2 levels and prevent and treat hypothermia as mentioned earlier. Again, continuous monitoring should be done, especially in patients with symptoms of or ECG changes which may be suggestive of ischemia or myocardial infarction, as well as asymptomatic patients with high cardiac risk. Continuous monitoring should be done, as well as monitoring the troponin levels and guiding ECG. This is just an algorithm summarizing an approach to your perioperative cardiac assessment for a patient with coronary artery disease found in your legs. So for patients scheduled for surgery with risk of coronary artery disease, if emergency, you may proceed, but you have to satisfy the patient first and supportive care needs provided.
Tanong sa tropa niya.
Bakit nga?
Alam ko ba, pag emergency, walang strap eh. Oh. Bakit may yes? Mga tropa mo talaga.
Ang emergency, if there is presence of your ACS, you have to optimize the patient first. If there is no evidence of ACS, you still stratify the patient whether he or she is low risk for the procedure or high risk for the procedure. If low risk, you may proceed with surgery. If high risk, you determine the functional capacity of the patient, weigh in whether to proceed with surgery or to do further testing or to optimize the patient first.
Hypertension lang ang ano mo, report mo. Bakit yung skin? Yan, ano. Problema na ito.
Okay lang daw kayo nandito sa piling. Kahit
Siguro mo mag-select sa desktop mo.